The city of Corpus Christi announced earlier this evening that staff with the Emergency Operations Center will be monitoring the heavy rain and possible flooding that's in the forecast for this week. Crews are activating a plan to manage the mosquitoes, the high grass in the parks and medians, and they'll begin addressing potholes. Anyone visiting city parks this week should be mindful of the potentially soggy conditions. Now, if you want to report a problem that's caused by a pothole, all you have to do is contact City Services. That number, 826-CITY.